comfortable in the round pen than standing behind the pulpit in front of the church. So, thank you all for coming. I just did a quick count and I quit at 100, and I didn't get whoever was still in the building. So that's really wonderful. Now, somebody told me one time that the only reason God created sheep was to have something to compare people to. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I do believe that when God created the horse, he created something that can show us about our relationship with him. And so tonight I'm going to do a little role play with Steph here in the round pen. And to set the stage, the round pen is the universe. I'm playing the part of God, and Steph is playing the part of me, or you. Now, obviously, there's some limitations to that analogy. For one thing, the round pen's a lot smaller than the universe, but it needs to be because of my limitations. See, nowhere in the universe can you escape God's presence or his influence on your life. And nowhere in this round pen can Steph escape my influence. Now, I'm not perfect and pure like God is, and my knowledge and power are limited. I have a sin nature. Now, Steph does not have a sin nature like I do, but she does have self-preservation. So, a horse can only do something for one of two reasons. Either because it thinks that's what it's supposed to do, or because that's what it needs to do to protect itself. So we'll play around with that just a little bit here. But I want to introduce you to Steph. This is my horse. She's an appendix quarter horse. I got her because a person that I was working for bought her and the foal at her side to keep them from going to an auction. She was headed to the auction because she was bucking people off and hurting them. And the person that bought her and the foal really only wanted the foal, and she gave Steph to me. When I got Steph, she was extremely nervous, just wound up tight, right, on the verge of just being hyper. You couldn't tie her. She was really bad to pull back. She bucked every time I put the saddle on for over 2 years. But she wasn't being bad. She had been hurt. Her back had been injured, and she was just protecting herself. So we gave her a chance for her back to heal. We had some fascial release work done on her to loosen things up, and then we just took things slow. And that brings us to the last part of this analogy here. Steph is not an untrained horse. We don't have enough time tonight to go through the process with an untrained horse. But I'm going to use Steph to show you the process I go through when I start a horse. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask her to move around the pen. And at this point, I'm just going to pick the direction, and that's all that matters. So we're going to go that way. So as she moves around the pen, if she tries to turn back, and most horses will if they haven't been trained like this, I'll just create a little storm and then get quiet when she goes the way I want. So I'll see if she does that again. I'm not controlling her speed at this point, just the direction. When I want her to change directions, I'll create a little storm in front of her and get quiet when she goes the other way. You guys remember the story of Jonah? God called Jonah to go to Nineveh. So Jonah goes down and finds a boat that's going the opposite direction. So God creates a storm. And they end up throwing Jonah overboard, and then a big fish swallows him and takes him where he's supposed to go. Don't expect me to create a big fish to swallow Steph, but we'll just create a little pressure to change her direction, and then release when she goes. So once I can control the direction, I'm going to start controlling how she changes directions. So I can turn her toward the fence by driving that eye away. So we'll do that again over here. I can turn her toward the fence by driving that eye away. So I create a little pressure, then release when she does what I want. Now I can get her to turn toward the middle of the pin. I didn't ask for that. There we go. I can get her to turn toward the middle of the pin by backing away and drawing her in, and then driving the other eye away. So I'm gaining a little more influence in her life. Steph is starting to think about maybe I exist and I have something to do with what she's doing. So is my scripture reader ready? Hear what it says in Acts chapter 17.
Acts 17:24 through 28. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by men, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the faces of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God in the hope that they might feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each of us. For in him we live and move and have our being.
So just like I'm influencing Steph, God basically provides everything we need, including our movement and our breath, for us to live. And he tries to influence us to get us to see if we can come to him, if we can find him. Now, as this gets a little better, I can use this driving and drawing to steer Steph around here. So I'll see if I can bring her around between the barrels here. So I'll try to draw this eye. Not quite going to make it that time. And that's all right, because the purpose here isn't necessarily to get her to go a certain place. It's to get her to think about what I want her to do. I want her to look to me for what to do. So I'll come in here behind her blind spot, and she'll bend her body to keep me in sight, and that'll bring her off the rail across the middle of the pen. That's not, there we go. It's not working quite as good as I'd like yet, but you see what happened there? So now I can get her to come around here, and I'll draw her off the fence this way, and then see if I can bend her back. I'll come in behind her, draw that eye over, there, I was closer. But again, I'm increasing my influence. I'm getting her to believe that I exist and to look to me for what to do. Now I'll back up and see if she'll draw to me. I'll move her out a little bit here. She's a little distracted. There, then I'll back up and see if she'll draw to me. Oops. We'll try that again. I pick the direction. Then I'll back up, see if she'll draw to me. So, while I'm doing that again, listen to what Hebrews 11 says.
Without faith, it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him.
Very good. So through this whole process, I've been increasing my influence on Steph, getting her to think about the fact that I exist, and I've been rewarding her with the release every time she does what I want. So at this point, Steph has become a Christian. She's come to God. She's found peace and rest. Okay? Listen to what it says in Matthew 11:28.
Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
So it's a wonderful place to be, and we all need to get here. But if this is all we do, if this is as far as we go, Steph will never be useful. I can sit here and love on her as to the end of the day, and I can stuff 10 pounds of carrots down her throat, and she won't be useful until she's trained. So listen to the very next verse in Matthew 11, Matthew 11:29.
Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for yourselves.
So for Steph to become useful, she needs to be trained. We need to put it, I'll use a halter, not a yoke, but she needs to learn some things about how to move and how to live her life, how she needs to be with the rider on her. So I'm going to do a few of the exercises I use when I'm working with a horse. The first thing is I'm going to send her around me in a circle, and we're going to change directions. So it's not about we're going to quit going this way and start going the other way. There's some specific movements I'm looking for. I want to turn on the forehand, which means the hind end walks around the front end. Then I want her weight to shift back and her front end to come across. And turn on the haunches. So we'll do a turn on the forehand. And she shifts her weight back and the front end comes across. This is a difficult maneuver. She's got to bend her body. She's got to step this hind foot up underneath where it carries more weight. There we go. So it's like going to the gym. You don't build your muscles without pushing against resistance. Good. Now another exercise that I can do with her that accomplishes the same type of thing is I'll send her sideways down the fence so she's moving forward and sideways a little bit with her body bent. I need her shoulder down a little more. There we go. So in this position, she's crossing over her front feet, but this hind foot is stepping further up underneath her body. So it's carrying more weight. Again, like going to the gym and lifting weights. And to get her foot that far underneath, she needs to lift her rib cage out of the way. So she strengthens her abdominal muscles. And that way she can lift her back and carry a rider and flex someday. And if you're close, you can probably see this muscle down here working. Now, a couple weeks ago, I talked about God warning the nation of Israel not to pick up the abominable practices of their neighbors. That's not what we're talking about here. This is abdominal. Abdominal practices are good. Abominable practices are not. Good. So, training involves difficulty. You think it would be any different in your spiritual life? Read the first verse there in Deuteronomy chapter 8.
And you shall remember the way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not.
So difficulties can come to test us. Okay, read the next verse.
And he humbled you, and he let you hunger, and he fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord.
So difficulties can come to teach us something. So read the next verse.
Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, the Lord your God disciplines you.
So difficulties can come to discipline us. Go ahead and read the next verse.
Who led you through the great and terrifying wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty ground, where there was no water, who brought you out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna that your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and test you, to do you good in the end.
So difficulties that God brings on us are always for our good. I'll wait till she gets a little more give there. Good. So it's summed up kind of nicely in 1 Peter chapter 4. So go ahead and read 1 Peter chapter 4.
Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed.
So it says, don't be surprised like something strange is happening to you. We should expect trials. Read 1 John.
Count it all joy, brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing.
So that's our goal in training the horse too. We want the horse to end up being perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So we don't want her bothered by the rope around her back end here. But again, this is difficult. She's going to protect that area, and she has to bend her body to unwind here. There, that was better. But there's something that happens a lot in this stage of a horse's training. They become religious. So the horse will memorize the pattern. The person always does the same exercises the same number of times in the same order. The horse will memorize that pattern and won't actually be thinking about what they want at all. The person does not have their mind. It looks really good, and a lot of people are fooled, and they think that that horse is doing really good, but they don't have their mind at all. So I'm going to check that out. I'll ask her to just step her shoulder over. And see, she goes out on a circle. She wasn't following my intention at all. She's being religious. She's memorized the pattern. So what I'll do is I'll break that up a little bit. Good. So I'm changing her pattern to get her to listen to me. There. I'll bring that right front foot forward. The left one just went back, so it may come forward first. There we go. Now, the right front foot forward. Right front foot back. Left front foot back. Left front foot forward. So I've got her out of being religious again. Now she's thinking about me. You know, in the Old Testament, God gave his people all kinds of rules about sacrifices. These certain sins required these sacrifices. These sins required those sacrifices. This occasion required this sacrifice. That occasion required that. But listen to what it says in Hosea 6:6.
For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings.
So God didn't really want the sacrifices. He wanted the people's heart. And that's the way it is with us. God doesn't want you to do all these religious things that you do for the sake of doing religious things. God wants your heart. So now, I can take Steph around the barrel, and we can go in a straight line. We can go back into a circle to go around the barrel. Gotta keep moving there, girl. Then we can go in a straight line. I can go straight toward the barrel and then move her sideways away from it. So she's not memorizing a pattern. She's doing exactly what I'm intending for her to do step by step. And that's the way we need to be. Are we doing our religious activities to be doing religious activities, or are we doing them because we love God, and we're doing them as a sign of our love for God? Now, this horse that was so bothered and troubled when I got her is peaceful and calm. So go ahead and read Isaiah 26:3.
You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed upon you, because he trusts in you.
So she's this calm, not because I don't ask her to do difficult things, but because she learns to trust me and she keeps her mind focused on me. Okay, Pastor?
If you would, bow your heads with me. Joe's just given us a very